Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, a subscriber of mine put me in contact with a gentleman on Twitter. I think his name was BadLefty. It's just an awesome name. It's an absolutely awesome name. So she wanted me to listen to his, it wasn't a critique, it was his perspective more so, but he was having a conversation about Sanders. And essentially, how do socialists regard Bernie Sanders? So let's take a look real quick and we can talk about it after.
Bernie Sanders is a centrist. Bernie Sanders is a centrist. I'll let you go. I swear you're going to get the last point of this. Bernie Sanders is a centrist. Bernie Sanders is an FDR Democrat. And for those of you who do not know, like real Marxist Leninists, like real hardcore ones, they don't really like FDR. And a lot of them, they're not really interested in defending Bernie Sanders either. A lot of them will defend Bernie Sanders. A lot of socialists and Democratic socialists will go out there and defend Bernie Sanders, especially Democratic socialists, but a lot of socialists they will defend because they view him as a capitalist roadster. And what I mean by that is this. It's like a lot of Marxist-Leninists believe that capitalism has to be allowed to fail in order to get to a socialist or communist state. And so people like FDR, people like as pragmatists, as people who try to create some kind of chimera of capitalism and socialism and democracy, all they're doing is delaying the inevitable and minimizing the strife that capitalism causes through socialism. But they're just delaying the inevitable, and we would be much better off if we just let the system fail, right?
All right, so this is fascinating, and look, he's right. Let me explain why he's right. I made a video, I think it was a while back, and I think it was named something like Justice Democrats, Know Your Enemy. Now, the reason I said know your enemy is because the policies that many of these groups, Brand New Congress, Justice Democrats, these groups, for the most part, are trying to go back to 1940s. My argument in that video was, hey, you need to go beyond 1940s. 1940s wasn't necessarily horrible. FDR was a lion. But you must understand the reason FDR did what he did. It wasn't to... Put it this way. FDR, there's this famous quote from FDR where he said his greatest accomplishment was that he saved capitalism. FDR realized that the system was eating itself. You had all these people, for the most part, just trying to maximize profit. Now, in a capitalistic model where everyone is working to their own ends, trying to maximize profit, it's a dog-eat-dog system. Meaning, you're taking actions, not because you don't even take in consideration the actions of the larger society. Your actions are to maximize profit for your own individual welfare. So the actions that you're taking, for the most part, so yeah, I'm going to take stuff out the ground and burn it into the sky because ultimately this allows me to maximize profit. I don't care if your kid gets breathing issues. I don't care if your environment suffers. Yes, I'm going to take this cow and I'm going to put him in a pen. Or take this pig and put him in a pen where he can't turn around and move himself. Yeah, again, I don't care about the discomfort of that particular animal. I am trying to maximize profits. Yes, I'm going to get $1 billion from exploiting labor. Yes, I'm going to fire that guy and move that job overseas. Yes, I'm going to fire that particular guy also, and I'm going to automate that process. All of these things are boiled down to the model. Increase profits, maximize profits. That's the point of the system. That's the incentive structure of a capitalistic model. What FDR realized was that it was right after the Great Depression. And stock market crash, people are in bread lines, the world is coming to an end. And it's not coming to an end, I'm being over the top, hyperbolic. But understand, FDR had people to his left. He had socialists, he had unionists, he had communists. He had people who were at his heels trying to not just get a policy pass or a tax increase. They were trying to take the entire system, meaning not a capitalistic system, meaning this country becoming a socialist country. Now, that's what was at stake. Now, FDR full understood. Those people called him a traitor to his class. He wasn't a traitor to his class, whether those greedy people believed it or not. Those plutocrats was eating themselves. FDR put provisions in place that would allow the system to keep ticking along. Now, if socialists don't like FDR, the reason they don't like him is because they understand that the policies that FDR put into place stave off the inevitable being the destruction of capitalism. So think of it this way. In a typical system, Mitt Romney may have a huge amount of money, but Mitt Romney would never buy as many cars as 300 million people. It's not so much, you can have people who are fabulously wealthy in a particular society, but it's the middle class that keeps that society ticking along. Those are the people who are working their jobs. Those are the people who are buying the products. Now, if those people don't have the money to buy those products, if those people don't have the jobs necessary to support themselves, what is your economy based off? So yes, this particular guy fired a particular worker, put in a robot, and accrued the profit to the top. That's great. He's a capitalist. He decides he's going to maximize profit. But right off the bat, we can see a contradiction. That individual that he fired no longer has the resources to purchase what this particular company is selling. Yes, you have a robot there. Yes, you're accruing a particular amount of profit. But you've just gotten rid of this guy. Now, if this happens throughout the country, it is easily foreseeable to see a situation where the public doesn't have money to keep the economy going. I make the point that part of the reason that we're having such difficulties now is because there's not enough to keep the economy going. You have the people at the top who is extracting more and more wealth from the people at the bottom. At a certain point, there is no people at the bottom. There are two classes. There's the uber rich and there's everybody else. FDR's plan was essentially to say, whoa, we need to tamp this down a little bit. We need to give money to the people at the bottom to keep this particular economy going, whether that means job programs, whether that means Social Security, whether that means Medicare. We need to do things to put money into those people's hands, because otherwise the system is going to go belly up. So he's right. Now Sanders, in this particular case, is for the most part just a classic Democrat. So where he is and where they are, that's just relative perspective. But the policies that Sanders takes on are just classical Democratic policies. There's no magic. There's no wild, crazy leftist. Ultimately, Sanders is just a centrist Democrat. Now, when people regard him, they say the guy's a democratic socialist and all this other stuff. He's finding a way to distinguish himself from others. But the policies that Sanders are going to put in place, for the most part, is just an FDR plan. Hell, maybe even an Eisenhower type plan. I mean, Eisenhower kept tax rates up to like 90% to pay off the war debt. So, yes, he's right. He's right. I've continuously made this point that stop settling for the 40s. Why is a socialist screaming out that he wants a revolution? And the plans and the things that he's implementing, or that he wants to implement, the policies, even though he's a socialist, was to save capitalism. It's a little weird. That's why I keep pushing this point of go beyond the 40s. Go beyond the 40s. If you want to say, I'll give you an example. And all I mean when I say go beyond the 40s, understand the problem that you're having in your society. Meaning the root cause of many of the ills that we come across. People like to say, oh, it's human nature that people act this way. No, it's not. Those people are talking out their ass. You don't know if that's human nature. Human nature is pliable. You could have 20 different societies. And depending upon the culture in those particular societies, the nature of an individual in each of those societies would be different. And each person in those societies, there will be one person saying, this is just human nature. That doesn't mean anything. You can essentially socialize people to any particular way you want for a particular society. It's just in our case, we've socialized this model of profit motive. Meaning the things that we do for the most part is trying to maximize profit. Everything else is subordinate to profit, including people, which is the problem. Now, if Sanders is going to come out and he's going to try to put in leftist policies, let's say FDR policies, the question to Sanders becomes, how does your policies assist with some of the issues that we're facing? Meaning, what is Sanders going to do about automation? What is going to do about automation? That is a disruptive technology. Cars, for the most part, are going to be automated. Stores are going to be automated. You're going to have stores like Amazon taking over convenience stores, just having technology. The person walks in, they walk out. Whatever they have in their pocket automatically is deducted from their account. You don't need a person in that particular store for that. What about worker co-ops? Now, in this particular situation, unions are nice, but a worker co-op gets you further along the way than just the union. Because ultimately, with a union, you still have that conflict of elite and the worker. A worker co-op eliminates that particular elite. My suggestion, and the thing I advocate, is to take policy positions that are intelligent and that actually solve particular problems with a larger focus on the issue, meaning you conceptually know that the issue is capitalism, and the policies that you implement and you put in place are there to try to take out one plank after the other of that particular system. At some point, you don't have to do it all in one go. You don't need this glorious revolution to make ends or to undermine that particular system. I'll give you an example. Say, for instance, you wanted to help people with their bills. Let's say you wanted to help people with their bills. Energy production is a straightforward way of doing that. So if you have a program that says, okay, we're going to have a green energy revolution, we're going to lower the cost of people's utility bills. So we're going to give some kind of incentives or benefits, or we're going to have a jobs program where we hire people to put in solar panels on everybody's houses. Hell, the way we construct the house is going to have power systems built into the house of air, or wind power, or even sunlight. Right off the bat, you've created a situation where, as a politician saying, I'm going to help you reach a certain level of energy independence where you're not beholden to a power company. I don't know who's going to complain about that other than the power company. Meaning your policy, yes, that policy could be considered to the left, but ultimately your argument is freedom. You're free and undetached from a particular power company or from a particular government entity that supplies that power. You yourself, your particular home, your particular place, your residence already has the constituent items that it needs to maintain and persist its own power source. Meaning that's not money that has to come out of your pocket. Hell, let's go do another one. Let's say food production. You have places that are food deserts all across the United States. Well, what about taking some of these abandoned buildings and converting those abandoned buildings into food distribution centers? Right off the bat, you do something for the sense of nutrition, but you also undermine this thing of people going hungry. You can take policies. Those policies can be bright. Those policies can be intelligent. And those policies can work to undermine the capitalistic system itself. My argument is, attack the model. Attack the model. If you attack the model, you're going to start dealing with the social ills because the model is the cause of those social ills. You don't even have to come up with a very clear idea of what the end result looks like, in as much as understanding that the problem is capitalism. The reason why I say you don't need an end result clear model is because ultimately your ideal society, it's going to be some proportion. There's a constant, which is your social, the natural social order, food, clothing, shelter, the sense of fulfillment. That's a constant. That doesn't change. At least for humanity, that doesn't change. Regardless of what system you're going to implement, that needs to be there. If that's not going to be there, you're going to end up with social ills. The society that we have today, crime, war, poverty, even mental difficulties. Do you realize that poverty has shown to have detrimental impact on brain development? It's amazing. My point is, if you focus on the issue, if you focus on the problem, we don't have the issue of scarcity, we have the issue of the capitalistic model forcing and persisting scarcity in order to allow somebody else to force another person into wage slavery. That's our issue. The social ills associated with it come from that scarcity, come from that lack. It comes from people not having what they need to be self-actualized. Fine. That's a constant. Now, the thing that's not a constant is the technological level of that particular society. Meaning, as your society increases or improves technologically, you can implement systems to try to get rid of some of the work that you require people to do right now. Meaning, I made this argument before, many of the jobs that people take on have no social use at all. Nobody needs a fry cook. The only reason somebody subordinates themselves to be a fry cook is because that person needs to eat. But there is no social utility at all for a fry cook. Architects, doctors, yes. But those people will do that job regardless. They have something in them that loves that particular job. The point I'm getting at is, based on your technological level, you can use that technology to cut down on the amount of work in a particular society, meaning you're lowering the amount of work that the people have to do in that society. You can also use that technology to make sure that each and every person has their needs met. Whether that's making sure they have a roof over their head, making sure they have food in their guts, making sure that when they wake up that morning, what they're doing is something that they love to do. It gives them excitement. And I guarantee you, your society is going to be a hell of a lot better. And it's not going to have anywhere near as many issues as you have if you make sure the people's individual needs are met. Now, yes, this is a leftist argument. But again, I make this case before. It's a leftist argument, but the idea is freedom. That is freedom. You are a wage slave. There's no way you can say getting up in the morning and working 8 hours at a particular job that you probably hate. And look, you don't even take away the fruits of your labor. You're being exploited by someone for your labor. I have a hard time seeing how that's different from slavery. The only distinction between those two things is that you're getting paid for the task. Ultimately, you're still being compelled in a vulgar and violent way. You not having your needs met, particularly when we don't have an issue of scarcity, that's exploitation. Or at the very least, it's exploiting your own human frailty in order to force you to work. What I'm getting at is, as a society, if Sanders is going to say he's a socialist, go beyond the 40s. Go beyond the 40s. Start attacking the issue itself. And start putting this idea out of putting policies in place that would actively, aggressively attack the issue, attack the root cause of the problem. And yes, again, I don't expect Sanders to go out there screaming about capitalism. I don't expect it. What I expect is put one policy after another that deals with the ills and the issues of a particular society. The policies themselves will be intelligent policies. Those policies will make sense. And the people will like those policies because they will benefit from those policies. Now, if you're just going back to the 40s and you're saying, I'm going to raise taxes, and after I raise taxes, I'm going to give healthcare and education, that's great, but you kind of have to ask the question of, why did that fail last time? Why did it fail last time? Why do you need a new deal? That's the question. The goal is to win, not to draw. It's not to go back to the 40s. It's to come up with a substantive plan for something different. Something that actually tries to go for the jugular and win, meaning toppling this capitalistic system. If those people don't particularly like FDR, or if they don't necessarily like Sanders's platform, the reason they're not liking it is because they understand that it allows this capitalistic system to persist itself because it stabilizes the system. I don't want the system stabilized. I want the system to go bust. I would imagine that socialists, anarchists, some of these other leftist groups feel the same way. That said, having a system go bust is a painful thing. So yes, I may want the system to go bust. Yes, I know we can do better than capitalism. Yes, I know we have the technology where we can automate the overwhelming majority of the processes that we have now that we need to live. And I'm uncomfortable with saying that I would rather it go bust as opposed to having one policy after the next to undermine one plank after another of the capitalistic model until the model is weak enough where you can blow it over. I just don't think any overwhelming change is going to be met with massive resistance. So I don't necessarily like this idea of a revolutionary model where there's violence and bloodshed. I do like this idea of making the argument of ripping the heart out of the elites, one policy at a time. Here's the problem. You can't do that through the parties. You can't do that through the parties. Now, the reason you can't do that through the parties, believe it or not, has nothing to do with economics. Zero to do with economics. the question is always, why are people voting for the Republican Party? And if you notice, there's a dichotomy in the country. You have one group, whites predominantly, overwhelmingly line up on the Republican side. Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, all the other racial, ethnic groups line up on the Democrat side. You have a schism in your particular society. The schism has nothing to do with economics. The schism has everything to do with identity. You have one group that believes that their country is being, quote unquote, taken from them. They believe this only because of relative distance. Meaning if you were in a situation where you felt like you were the upper crust of a particular society, you see another demographic that you've subjugated, abused, treated miserably for centuries. And you see them getting a little bit of level, meaning ticking up a little bit within that particular society. At the exact same time, you're noticing that your wages haven't budged. You're noticing you're working longer. Hell, maybe you might even have lost your job and had to take on a service job, something that's paying $8 an hour when you were used to making $17 an hour. Now, under that situation, is it possible that that individual will say, make some weird correlation between that group doing a little bit better, those immigrants coming into this particular country, in my own situation? They might. Granted, there's no there there. There's no there there. It's irrelevant. It doesn't work that way. The reason why that guy is in a bad shape has nothing to do with African Americans or other demographics ticking up in society in regards to prominence. But if you're looking at it from an ideological, cultural perspective, you may think that. For the Democratic side, those Southern strategies and the attacks that the Republican Party had did against African Americans, it is an attack on identity. So right off the bat, African Americans don't vote the same way other races vote, or at the very least the way whites vote. From our perspective, there is only one party to vote for. They're not two. So anybody we give as a Democrat, at the very least a Democrat, for us, we have this belief that that guy will not actively and punitively come after us. We can't say the same for the Republican Party. What you have is a cultural divide that has nothing to do with economics. It has nothing to do with the larger issues. You can create that division in society just purely on the for and against thing, just the binary system between the two. In order to break that, you need a third party. There's too much bad blood between these two parties to make that work. Ultimately, you're going to need Trump voters on your side. Well, those Trump voters have certain issues with the Democratic Party that they may not necessarily want to acknowledge, but those issues are there nonetheless. Because ultimately, you need to explain to me why you would vote against your own self-interest. Particularly when who you're voting for is going to hurt you economically. In the Democratic side, you have African Americans who are voting for a party who does nothing for them at all. To say, well, this guy is not going to punitively go after me, it's not really an excuse to vote for that particular person. That's not an affirmative vote. That's a defensive vote. I'm voting because I'm just scared of that guy. That's a problem. If you want to meld these two, you're going to need something else. You're going to need something else. I've heard people say, dude, stop saying something about drafting Sanders. Well, the reason why I mentioned the draft Sanders thing is because Sanders has the ability to split the difference. He can pull both. The parties themselves, I don't believe have the ability to do that. I don't believe they have the ability to do that. BadLefty is, I agree with him. I totally agree with him on this one. He's not a socialist in that sense. It's Sanders. I know people like to call him a socialist. He's just a Democrat. He's just a Democrat. This country has just moved so far to the right. The way these guys, when the Democratic Party, the party was supposed to be the party of the people, the 99%, the majority of the public, the poor, the workers, the disenfranchised, the downtrodden. That was supposed to be the Democratic Party. Now, at some point, under Bill Clinton, when he started taking all that money, just gobs of money, and he started moving his policies to the right. Now, a Democrat can give cover to right-wing policies in the same way that a Republican can give cover to left-wing policies. So yes, Sarah Palin can take oil revenue and give it out as a dividends check to everybody in Alaska, there was a reason she had an 80% approval rating. Could a Democrat pull that off? I'm hard pressed to believe yes. Or at the very least without getting a huge amount of pushback. Can a Democrat, however, turn around and enshrine Bush's tax cuts into law? Yes, Obama could, even though Bush couldn't get those through. Can a Democrat deregulate Wall Street? Yes, Bill Clinton could, even though the former president could not do it. George Bush can do it. What I'm getting at is, the Democratic Party was supposed to be the voice of the 99%. When they started taking money, and when they started doing favors for the people who were giving them that money, when they decoupled themselves from workers, from the society at large, the public lost its voice. It completely lost its voice. Meaning the conversation in Washington was only between oligarchs. Everybody else was a spectator. Yes, they would give lip service to your causes, and they would give lip service to you because they still need you to vote for them. They need to scam you out of your vote. But ultimately, the real nuts and bolts of it was that for the most part, you weren't being represented by that party. If Sanders wants to do something, he's not going to be able to get it done through this party. He's not going to be able to get it done through this party. And I don't like this idea that saving capitalism is his platform. And don't get me wrong, I love Sanders to death. I don't necessarily like him working with the Democrats. So bake that into the cake. I just don't think he needs to go this path. And ultimately, with his popularity and everything else, he could strip away himself from that party and excoriate both. And overnight, he'd get all those independents, he'd get a slew of Democrats, and he would even get a decent percentage of Republicans. That is a political revolution. That revolution is there if he wants it. He just has to be willing to take it. So, all right, guys. This kind of, towards the end, it kind of went off the rails, but I thought it was an interesting conversation. We was making this point about how socialists see Sanders. We're just far to the right in this country. That's what it boils down to. So from our perspective, if you're looking at politics in London, in the UK, their conservatives are just our Democrats. Our Democrats are more conservative than they are conservatives. I'm trying to give you the perspective on how so far batshit crazy off base the parties are in this particular country. We have the best Congress money can buy. We have the best Congress money can buy. That money buys particular favors and it buys certain policies. Well, those policies are usually not in your interest. The hope is that Sanders makes this choice of, yeah, this isn't working, I can't get anything through. But he doesn't necessarily go back to just typical FDR. He actually puts forward policies that exceed the capitalistic model. That's my hope. That's totally my hope. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, subscribe, like the video, and you can always support the work through Patreon. Thanks guys.